Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. This is episode 34. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd. We've got a good amount of news to talk about today. We've got a super busy weekend in combat sports coming up. We're going to kick it off by talking about the breaking news that Dana White had last night. And that is that Suga Sean O'Malley is going to get another title shot in with Merab Dvalishvili at bantamweight. Co-main event will also be bantamweight, but the women's title fight between Julianna Pena and Kayla Harrison. We got some other UFC news to go over, some stuff in boxing, some promotional stuff. We've got a few cards coming up before we get to Saturday. We'll talk about those. We have the PFL World Tournament starting tomorrow night on Thursday, and then on Friday we have the GBM show, which there's been a change to, as well as a BKFC, the first part of their two-day double header in Dubai. So let's start it off with obviously the big news, and that is that UFC 316 was announced for June 7th in Newark, New York. And this wasn't really a surprise, but we do now know that it will be Merab Dvalishvili defending his bantamweight crown against Sean O'Malley in a rematch. So Sean, of course, was the champion when he lost it to Merab in September. Since then, Merab has defended the belt once against Umar, and he's been a very active champion. He's fighting every 4 or 5 months, which I love. And Sean has not fought since then. So he is getting the immediate rematch, which a lot of people are not happy about. And I'm one that I do think that he should have to have another fight, but there's not really a solid number one contender at the moment for Merab to fight against. So, and Sean is a big name. So, I can see why they went with this route. And I do think that Sean will make improvements. I think he'll need to. He says, he only had one hip last time, whatever. Everyone's got an excuse. I do think that he'll make it more competitive this time around, but if I'm being honest, I really still think Merab is going to beat him. I just think that Sean had nothing to do with Merab's wrestling and stuff, and Merab just totally dominated him, unbelievably dominated him. And, if Sean can get better in there and try and make it more of a striking affair, or if he can, get better at his groundwork, then maybe he'll have a better chance, but I still think this will be Merab's fight. But hey, you know what? It's good to get this announced. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a big fight. Merab is honestly, I think he's growing in popularity. I think that a lot of people like him now. People used to crap on his fight style, but after the fight with Umar, it was very exciting. And his personality, he's always been very funny. So I'm really excited to see that. The build-up should be good again. This is just going to be a really interesting fight, and I hope that Sean is able to do more, and even if he doesn't win the fight, if he can make himself seem, more deserving of the title shot, because right now a lot of people don't think that he deserves it. As for the co-main event, another fight I'm very much looking forward to is Julianna Pena defending her title for the first time against Kayla Harrison. Now, let me just say, I don't think that Pena should be the champion right now. I thought that Raquel Pennington beat her in October, but that's regardless. She is the champion, but I don't think that she'll be for long. I think Kayla Harrison is one of the best female fighters in the UFC right now. Ever since she came in, she's just been on fire, and I totally think that she's going to win this fight. Is that going to say, it's just going to be total domination? And maybe it's still going to be a title fight, so it'll still be competitive, but I'm certainly picking Kayla Harrison. I'm a big fan of hers. I think she's one of the most exciting female fighters, and I think that she's probably top 5 pound for pound. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I do think Kayla will win, and we'll see from there. Another UFC announcement Dana White made last night is that we know that Jamal Hill is out of the Khalil Roundtree fight in the main event of UFC Kansas City. Stepping in will be Ian Machado Gary versus Carlos Prache. So Prache was supposed to fight on UFC 314 against Jeff Neal. Neal got injured and pulled out. It's now going to be Gary versus Prache, which I think is a freaking phenomenal fight. I think that's so competitive. I don't know who's going to win. I'm a huge fan of Carlos Prache. To be honest, I don't hate Ian Gary as much as a lot of other people do. I know that he's got the stuff with his wife, which is very controversial, and people like to poke fun at that. But, as a fighter and as his fighting mentality, I think that he's pretty fun. I think that he's, a pretty good fighter, and he had a great showing against Shavkat. But I think that a lot of people gave him his roses after that. I'll say this, though, that may be a little bit of a tough fight coming in here with Carlos Prache, who looks like an absolute nightmare ever since he joined the UFC. When you look at Shavkat in the UFC, he was 6-0 with 6 finishes. Prache is 4-0 with 4 finishes, and Ian Gary's taken both these fights on short notice. So I think that Ian Gary certainly is a path to victory, but I think that the favorite may be Carlos, and, I'd be fine with either guy winning. I'm very excited to see this fight. I think it's a phenomenal replacement, and honestly, it's probably a fight that I'm more looking forward to than I was Hill Roundtree. Okay, let's talk about the cards we have coming up this weekend. We've got a few good ones. Before we get to Saturday, we have a show on Thursday evening and two shows on the day during the day on Friday. So the first show we're going to have is in Orlando, and it will be the start of the PFL World Tournament. So, I'm very much looking forward to this one. We did hear some news today that Magomed Umalatov is out, and it will now be Joseph Luciano taking his place. So in the first round, this is the welterweight division, by the way. Main event will be Jason Jackson, Andrei Koreshkov, as well, and then also on the card you'll have Muhammad Berkamov versus Thad Jean, Joseph Luciano versus Logan Storley, and Giannis Bakar versus Masayuki Kikiori. I am not really going to make a lot of picks here, as to be honest, I don't know a lot of these guys too well, and I think that once we get through the first round, it'll be easier to, pick up and stuff, but I'm really excited to see how this new format works. I'm hoping that their pacing is better. I know that's been a big struggle with them in the past. I did see that they updated the start time to now 8 p.m., so it looks like we're just going to have the 8 fights that, just the 8 fights between the two divisions. This week, it'll be the welterweight division and the featherweight division. And the featherweight division, if it hasn't changed, so the featherweight division should be Jesus Pinedo versus Adam Boric, Gabriel Braga versus Fred Dupras, Jeremy Kennedy versus Mavlid Kaibulev, and Nathan Kelly versus Taekyun Kim. So I think there's actually a lot of bigger names in the featherweight division, at least that I see here. You got Jesus Pinedo, Braga, Kelly. There's some good names in there, and I'm excited to see how that one goes. And also, I'm seeing that a lot of their stars, they've kind of separated them out. But, yeah, this is going to be a really fun tournament. I'm excited to see, and I think the reason why they only have 8 fights is that both of their alternate fights, they've actually had to use them. I think there's been a lot of pullouts in the PFL tournament so far, as you'd expect, but this is just the first round. We haven't even started the tournament yet, and we're already getting a lot of pullouts, which is not great. Anyways, I'm still looking forward to this. As for the main event, it'll be Jason Jackson, Andrei Koreshkov, and the co-main will be Jesus Pinedo, Adam Boric. I'm going to pick Jackson and Pinedo to win this fight. I just think that they're probably the favorites. They're the bigger names. And I don't want to be one of those guys like, they have more star power, but it's usually for a reason. So I'm really looking forward to PFL World Tournament 1 in Orlando. They've got another one next Friday and the Friday after that, and I think it's 2 weeks, and they have one on Thursday. So we're going to see how this new format works. I'm excited to see how it does. And let's move on to Friday. We have got BKFC 71. It will be in Dubai, as we mentioned. They have a 2-day event there. Main event will be Trout versus Trinidad Snake. Co-main Hart versus Emery. So this will be for the welterweight and women's strawweight championships. There will be 11 fights total on the card. And then, on Saturday, we'll have another card with Kai Stewart versus Tommy Stridham. And then Hannah Rankin versus Borga. And that'll be for the featherweight championships, actually in both men and women's divisions. And that one will have 10 fights on the card. We'll talk about BKFC 72 more on Friday, on Friday's episode. But today we're really just going to focus on 71, just going to run over it. I'm really excited for this. I think Trout Trinidad Snake is an awesome fight. I know that Austin Trout has been champion for quite some time. And I know that Trinidad Snake has been a huge prospect for them, if you will. I don't even know if you could call him a prospect, but he's very good. They've been building him up for a while. We did see last week Luis Palomino win his fight, and I think that he could be mandatory for this one. We'll see. Or actually, wait, no. He's not. This is a different division than that. I just remember that he fought Austin Trout a while ago. But, I think that as for who wins this, I'm going to pick Carlos Trinidad Snake. And that may be a little bit of a bad pick. I'm not sure. I know that he is definitely probably less experienced overall just on the big stage, but everything I've seen from him, he's looked fantastic. Not as though Austin Trout hasn't looked good as well. I'm just going to go out here and I'm going to say, give me Trinidad Snake. I think that there's going to be at least one upset in these 4 title fights. I'm really looking forward to seeing this card. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. BKFC is so fun to watch. This is a fantastic fight. And, I'm going to pick Trinidad Snake to win it in an upset. But I'm still going to hold out and say that it's going to be a very competitive fight, I think. Okay, and then we talked about the co-main event will be Britton Hart versus Ty Emery. I think Britton Hart will still win this. I mean, she's 9-3 in BKFC, which you say, that may not be like the best record. It's still a pretty good record, and she's very experienced. I mean, you don't see a lot of bare knuckle fighters, I feel, that have that many fights. I mean, Ty Emery's only 2-1. I think Brighton Hart has been the champion for a bit, or at least her title run has been quite good. So I'm going to say that she wins this one as well. I really don't know what I'm talking about here, if I'm being honest. BKFC is so hard to predict. It's just so crazy. But, I think that we should be in for some good fights. There's 9 other fights on this card. And, I think that it should be a really fun night. I'm hopeful that it doesn't go too long. I know that bare knuckle is usually very quick, and I don't know. At least the one on Saturday, because there's so many events. I just want to get through it quickly. But yeah, you've got some good fights on the card I'm seeing here. Not a lot of names that I recognize, to be honest. It does seem like they're putting on some Middle Eastern talent, which is cool. But yeah, this is going to be a really fun 2-day event, and yeah, it all starts tomorrow at the Dubai Tennis Stadium, so that'll be a cool venue. And then lastly, our other card for the weekend is the GBM show in York Hall. So we had some news this morning. Shakan Pitters is out of the fight. This is the second time it's been called off close to the date. So it will now be Daniel Dos Santos versus Bradley Rea, or Brad Rea. And I think that's actually a really good replacement opponent. Brad Rea, I think he's like 20-1, and Dos Santos is 22-1. So still a very competitive fight. Rea's, been looking a very good form recently. He did have the one loss to Tyler Denny, but I think that was a couple years ago. I believe Brad Ray was supposed to have a fight on the last Crescendo. Was that him, or am I just crazy? I feel like he was supposed to fight Lennox Lewis's new prospect. I'm not sure if that's him. I may be confusing with someone else, but I feel for Shakan Pitters because he was supposed to get this fight in February, and then it didn't happen. Dos Santos had to pull out. He's stuck on the date. Then he gets to here. He's finally about to get it, and then it doesn't happen, and then somebody else gets the opportunity instead of him. But I'm glad the GBM kept this fight on the show. They still kept Dos Santos and the title, because last time they just put Pitters in like a 6-rounder, and that would have been awful. So it's good that we're still going to get a EBU light heavyweight title fight. As for who wins, I'm going to have to say Dos Santos just because Brea is stepping in on such short notice, but it still could be good. GBM is on the way up, man. They are really putting on some good shows. And they have the big one in May. I'm really impressed with what they've been doing. I think that they are becoming probably like the 4th or 5th biggest promotion in the UK. Obviously, you have Matchroom and Queensberry and Boxer, and then you have Wasserman. And I think GBM is, honestly, you could say they've surpassed them. At least this year, in terms of the amount of shows that they put on, and some of the production and the amount of fights and the amount of good fights that they have and the fighters and the titles, they may be doing better stuff right now. So I don't know. It's close. But yeah, I'm really enjoying what they've been doing. Co-main event, you'll have, what's her name? Emma Dolan versus Lauren Parker for the British and Commonwealth super flyweight titles. That should be a pretty good fight. And then you'll also have Ben Crocker versus Tiernan Bradley, and that's for the IBF European Super Lightweight title. So that's a good fight. I think that those guys are both undefeated. You've got Kieran Malloy on the card as well, who's a pretty good prospect, and then you have the return of Huey Fury. So I mean, this is a quality show at York Hall. I think they have 9 fights in total, so they've got some other prospects they'll put on the prelims. I'm really expecting a good show. Show, it was some, it was just a really prospect heavy show. I still really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they got going on. 3 title fights on top of the bill. I'm going to say Dolan retains. She's looked pretty good recently. I'm going to say Dos Santos and Ray, I think, is actually a good fight. But I think Dos Santos will probably win just because, he's been in a real camp, not just 3 days. And then I'll pick Crocker over Bradley. Crocker's been talked about a lot. I've seen him on some other shows recently that he's been on. Yeah, so there should be some good fights. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get into some more news that's been going on recently, because we've got quite a bit. Okay, this one is very interesting. So we saw a while ago that Zack Snyder was working with Dana White and His Excellency on something. Didn't know what that was. We now know. They've announced it. It'll be a UFC movie called Brawler, about a UFC fighter who it's like a rags to riches type story. Rough guy who works his way up and then becomes UFC champion. It's really interesting that Turkey seems like he's going to be the one funding it. So it's not like they're going to go to some kind of big movie studio. I don't even know who it would be if they go to Warner Brothers or Amazon or Netflix, somebody like that to take this movie. It seems like they're going to Turkey and the Ring and Riyadh season is going to fund the movie and distribute it. I'm sure they'll find somebody else who knows how to do that stuff because it's not, you can't just make a movie. But this is really interesting to me. How they're commissioning someone to make a story about their own product. You don't usually see that. I mean, you look at Roadhouse, they made it and then they just added in UFC as part of it, but that wasn't like the main thing in the movie. So I don't know. This is really surprising to me. I did not think it was going to be this, but I've realized we probably should have seen it coming. Turkey said he wants to make boxing movies. This isn't a boxing movie, but I don't really know what the plan is for when this is going to come out, who they're going to cast, if it's going to be if they're going to have like Dana White in the movie, not as himself, but I mean like somebody else play him. I have no idea what kind of a movie this is going to be and how much it's going to be set in the real world of the UFC. But I just think it's fascinating. Zack Snyder is a hit or miss director. I'm a big movie fan, and even just when it comes to like his DC stuff, which is what he's most known for, it's so hit or miss. On one hand, he has such an ambitious vision when he makes his movies, but on the other hand, it just feels like a lot of the execution isn't great, and he makes a lot of odd choices. And in a UFC movie, it should be pretty straightforward, but I can totally see this getting hyped up as this like, oh my gosh, this like grand thing, what an incredible story, and then it just kind of falls flat. And he tries too hard to make some kind of a statement with it, and it just kind of falls flat. But we'll see. Getting Zack Snyder to make a movie for them is a big name. He's a huge director. Yeah, this is very interesting to see when this movie comes out, and I'll definitely check it out. Okay, TGB Promotions have officially put a hold on the T-Mobile Arena for June 21st. This is obviously going to be Gervonta Davis, Lamont Roach too. I just think I'm so excited that they are. It seems like this is really going to go down. We're going to get this locked down. June 21st is a very quick turnaround, especially for Tank, who only fights once maybe twice a year, fighting just 3.5 months later. I'm glad that they're doing an immediate rematch because we need that. I still honestly can't even believe that fight was a draw. Not that I don't agree with the decision, I do, but just that happened. Like, that Tank didn't win the fight. It's just so mind-boggling to me. Like, I don't know, but I can't wait to see a run back. It was a phenomenal fight first time around. I think it's going to be even better. It's going to be even bigger this time around, and I think the Tank is going to get it right. Okay, speaking of PBC, Top Rank and PBC, according to the Boxing Scene, are teaming up on multiple cards to keep big fights in the U.S. So we did hear Bob Arum say during the fight week for Mayor Ryan 2 that he is going to be working with Al Heyman more on fights, which is no surprise. The Turkey effect is real. Promoters are starting to work together more, but it seems like they're not doing it under Turkey. They're doing this to compete with Turkey, which I love. Competition is good for the sport, and I think that this is nothing wrong with this. Hey, if we're going to get PBC to work with other promoters, especially Top Rank, let's do it. They definitely have the two biggest American stables. Some fights listed in the article that we know are like very much could happen. You have Sebastian Fendora, Xander Zayas. They said that they have had conversations about that fight, which is lovely. We need that fight. That's a fantastic one. It's not a unification, but I think it's a really good mandatory defense, and I'm waiting for Zayas to get his title shot. Another one mentioned is, of course, Stephen Fulton against either Oshaki Foster, which we know is a possibility and likely to happen on Tank Roach 2, or Stephen Fulton versus Bruce Carrington. Bruce Carrington is now likely to be called mandatory for the WBC soon, and I think that him and Fulton is a fantastic fight. Should Fulton move up, it would probably be Ray Vargas versus Bruce Carrington. I don't know if Vargas then gets reinstated as the WBC champ. I believe he does. Or if they fight for the vacant. But I think he'll just be reinstated, but he'll still have to defend against Bruce Carrington. But yeah, so they're really working on some big fights. And I think that Ray Vargas actually is a PBC fighter, so it'd be the same thing, them working on a fight together. Some potential fights that the article listed. I don't think there's been any discussions on these, but just other fights that could happen. Gervonta Davis versus Vasily Lomachenko or Keyshawn Davis, both huge unification fights that we need for Tank. You've got Brian Norman Jr. versus Mario Barrios. That's a fight that Norman made it clear he wants, and I think that's a really good one to do next, as Ennis and Stanionis are unifying, let the other two champs unify. And then you also have Teofimo Lopez versus Gary Antoine Russell. This is a fight that I hadn't really thought of, but it makes sense. They are two American super lightweight champions, and we know that Tio's going to fight Barboza, and then we'll see if he moves up to welterweight. I am of the belief that he will after this fight, but if he doesn't, he needs to unify, whether it's Russell, whether it's Hitchens, whether it's even Puello, he just needs to unify. Another fight listed was Janibek Alimkhanuli fighting either Carlos Adames or Arslan Lara, because we really need to get some more unification there. I don't even know why Lara and Adames haven't unified yet, but that's whatever. I think Janabek Adames is clearly the best fight in the division, and one that I would like to see next. So another big piece of news, I don't even know if this is news, but just some a cool moment that happened is that there was the Japanese Boxing Awards. Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani were both on stage together, and they got honored together, I guess, and shook hands and just said like, "Hey, let's fight next year. This time next year, let's put on a big event at the Tokyo Dome, something like that." And I'm like, perfect. Do I think you have to wait until next year? No, I think you can do it next. But it's good that they're going to do that, and it was Inoue who said let's do it, and that was what I was worried about. I don't think that Inoue was going to duck Nakatani, but we know that Inoue is going to move up to 126 sooner rather than later. In fact, December is what we're hearing, and if he does, it makes me think, is he going to drop down back to 122 to fight Nakatani? Is Nakatani going to have to jump 2 divisions to come meet Inoue? I have no idea. I don't think that you need world titles in that fight. You could do it just at 122 after Inoue vacates and after he's already made his appearance at 126, or Nakatani could just jump straight up to 126 because he totally is the frame for it. He's a pretty tall guy for how how little he weighs. So I think that they could do it at either division. I just want to see the fight happen. I don't know why they're letting it marinate, but I also know that neither of them are gonna get beaten likely because they are so just dominant in their divisions, and nobody in the lower weight divisions can touch them at all, it seems, except for maybe each other. So glad that they're both on board with that fight, and early 2026 seems like when we're going to get it. Mike Coppinger has joined the Ring magazine. This is really interesting. Now, I know that a lot of journalists, when they aren't always tied down completely to just that magazine, and what I mean by that is that they'll have their podcast or they'll be on a broadcast. Chris Mannix is a Sports Illustrated guy, but then he's also has a podcast and is a commentator on DAZN. Mike Coppinger has been largely exclusively with ESPN. I don't think he's really done anything outside of that. And it seems like he may have left ESPN, which would be crazy. And I didn't read into it because the type of guy that would write a story like this is Mike Coppinger. But, he is like probably the biggest reporter in boxing right now. And him joining the Ring is huge. You know that they're giving him a bag as they give everyone. And as soon as they announced it, he had his first story, and that is that the Caleb Plant and Jamal Charlo doubleheader is looking much more likely for May 31st, and he has opponents. It'll be Jamal Charlo versus Thomas Lamana, which we knew was going to happen. We know that was supposed to happen on March 1st. Didn't happen for whatever reason. And then it'll be Caleb Plant versus Jose Armando Resendez, who fought Elijah Garcia last year and was stopped by him. Or not last year, but 2023. To be honest, this is a little bit disappointing to me. Just these opponents. I was hoping for someone a bit better, but it also says in the article that he believes, or he's hearing, that this is to set up a fight with them later on this year, which I don't mind. I love to see Plant versus Charlo. I would rather see Plant Berlanga right now, but I won't complain at all about Plant versus Charlo. They've got a lot of heat as well, and I think that Charlo certainly needs a comeback fight, but I don't think that Plant does. Him fighting Trevor McCumbee was good, but I actually think this is a bit of a step down from that. So I don't really love the fight. I don't love the Charlo fight either, but what are we going to do about it? I'm just glad to see them. This is going to be on May 31st, which is my birthday, so that'll be a really nice card to watch. Okay, Alicia Baumgardner has been announced to defend her undisputed super featherweight titles versus Jennifer Miranda as the co-main event to July 11th on Netflix. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano co-main event. We're going to talk a lot about MVP later on this show, but for now, just that is very exciting. Miranda is undefeated, and while I don't think this is going to be a super hard fight for Baumgardner, I still think that she's the better fighter and she'll still win. I think that this is a decent opponent. It's a mandatory. What are you going to do about it? I'm still looking forward to this fight. We knew she was going to be co-main event, so this comes as no surprise, but just to get it announced feels good. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this event. I think it's going to be huge. I'm hoping they can get some other big names on it. And I hope that she makes a statement in her MVP debut, gets a knockout on such a big stage. I'm really excited to see this card and who else they announced for it, but more so excited just to see Alicia Baumgardner back in the ring, and hopefully she can fight the winner of the main event, if that is Amanda Serrano or if it's Katie Taylor. Who I think Amanda Serrano, Alicia Baumgardner makes so much sense. I'm just worried that now that they're both signed with MVP, they won't do that. The GFL has announced its first events for May 24th and 25th in LA. Broadcast details are still to come. And, we've got a lot of fights that they announced for it. I don't know if I'm really going to go through those. I can't even remember all the teams that they have. But, it's good that they've officially, announced that, hey, we're going to have this, we're going to have the GFL first show. It feels real now. It's going to be at a theater in Los Angeles, I think. And it's going to be like a 4, 5, 6,000 seat venue, so pretty good. And they're putting a lot of, all of their fighters are going to fight on this 2-day event. And it seems like 2-day events are growing a lot in terms of usage and popularity. There's just one in Japan last week. There's one at BKFC this week. We had another one in Japan last year. And then we've got a GFL one. Excuse me. I don't know why I was brain dead there. But, GFL is going to do their first 2-day event. Tony Ferguson, Dylan Dennis is maybe the biggest fight they have right now just because of the names, and that matchup is crazy, but we'll see. Speaking of Dylan Dennis, Mike Perry said that he was offered by Misfits to fight Dylan Dennis in MMA, and this is really interesting because it kind of makes it seem okay as Misfits moving away from KSI Dylan Dennis, and that offer doesn't really make a lot of sense because they know Dylan already has an MMA fight coming up with Tony Ferguson. It didn't make a lot of sense for him to do the KSI fight in the first place, but especially now when he already has an MMA fight booked, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Would I love to see Mike Perry versus Dylan Dennis in MMA? I absolutely would. I think that that's a really good fight, and I think it's a really fun one for Misfits to do on their first MMA show, whenever that is. But it is a little bit questionable. I think that KSI was legitimately ill, but just the way that they've handled this whole situation is so odd to me. They've been so quiet about it. They canceled the entire event. KSI was out at a concert the night he was supposed to be fighting. They're trying to set up something else for Dylan Dennis and not do the rematch. Not do the rebooking. It's just so odd, the whole thing. But anyways, GFL has got their first events in May. We do not know a broadcast detail yet. I honestly think that it'll just end up being on their website. That's what they said. If they can't lock one down, then they're just gonna do it themselves. It'll probably be a pay-per-view if that's so. I'm guessing they're trying to get someone like DAZN locked down, but I think that they're gonna ask for a lot of money, and I don't know if a lot of people are gonna pony up the money for them when they haven't put on a show yet. So it all remains to be seen. We've got a huge new player entering the MMA world. Let's see how successful they can be, but they've got a lot of fighters. Okay. Deontay Wilder says he's also going to have a fight in December in South Korea. It seems like he's working with Global Combat Collective and BOK Prime for a bit. South Korea is so weird to me. That's so random why he would have a fight there. I mean, they don't have a lot of fights there, period, especially boxing. And now Deontay Wilder from Alabama is going to go and fight there. There's not even there's a South Korean heavyweight for him to fight. That just doesn't make any sense, period. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I doubt it will. We hear all the time about fighters talking about going to these random locations and it never materializes, and I bet this is one of them. I bet he may get offered a big fight in Saudi or something like that and take it, but we'll see. Vito Milnicki Jr. versus Kamil Gardzielik has been announced for June 21st at the Prudential Center. This is very interesting to me because I feel like Top Rank recently has not put on as many shows that they usually have, and I feel like they don't have as strong of a stable as they have in the past. And them putting on this show is a little bit like, hold on, you're doing the Prudential Center in Milnicki. I guess is from New Jersey, and I have no doubt he'll sell a good amount of tickets, but I was like, you haven't really built him up that much to be like an arena sellout guy. I mean, he's a rising contender, but he's only fought once in middleweight. He's only been on 2 or 3 of your events. And now he's going to headline? I'm like, you don't have anyone else to headline? They didn't even have a co-main announced. So I'm very curious why they're putting him in the main event. I mean, yeah, they've had some other top rising stars fight in the main event before, like Xander Zayas and Richard Torres. But even Richard Torres is another one where it's kind of surprising he's already getting a main event. I don't know. I feel like a lot of top ranks guys, they're either combining them onto big cards, like what they're doing with Naoya Inoue and Rafael Espinoza, or Emmanuel Navarrete and Gabriel Murataya, or Raymond Murataya. I always get them confused, but Ray Murataya, I feel like they're doing that a lot recently, and it does have me question, okay, what are you doing with your other cards then? Because here you've got a big card booked. This is an arena. This isn't like another casino in Vegas or something, and you're putting it against you're doing Vito Milnicki, who's a good fighter, but I just don't see him as a headliner yet. Anyways, I believe his opponent is undefeated, so it should be a good fight. His last fight with Connor Coyle was really good. I thought he got robbed in that one. It was a draw. He didn't lose it, but I don't think it was a draw at all. I think that he definitely won the bout. But anyways, that'll be June 21st in Newark, New Jersey, and likely on the same night as Gervonta Davis Lamont Roach too. On to some Jake Paul stuff. So first of all, Jake Paul's supposed to have a fight announcement this week. I don't know if this was the real Nikisa Badarian, but I saw on X that somebody with the name Nikisa Badarian, he was followed by the other account, so I have to assume it's legit, said there are several fight announcements coming out in the next few days. The first one we already got, and it was actually yesterday with Most Valuable Prospects 12. It's going to be Denier Pero. He is returning to the ring in the Caribe Royale. If you don't know this guy yet, you need to look him up. He is one of the best heavyweight prospects right now. He's so fun to watch. He's so ferocious. He's Cuban. He's fantastic. He's 10-0 with 8 knockouts. He's in with Cesar Navarro, who's 13-2 with 11 knockouts. That's a great main event. I'm really excited to see Denier, the Fear Pero, return again. And then also in that Corey Marksman, who's 10-0-1 with 7 knockouts against Tayden Beltran, who's also 10-0-1 but with 5 knockouts. So that's a really good fight there. Corey Marksman is a very good fighter. He's pulled off 2 great wins recently on MVP shows, or he had a draw and then a win. But yeah, no, that's a really good show they've got. Their prospect shows are always very good. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then they of course announced today Baumgartner Miranda, and then we're hearing Jake Paul will have his fight announced this week. We have no idea who it's going to be. It could literally be anyone. It could range from Butterbean to Alexander Usyk. For all we know, it could be anyone, and I'm so excited to see who that ends up being. But yeah, it's just such a weird world where, I mean, like, we have no idea. Jake's had all these huge fights come out, and then they all fell through, and now it looks like he won't return until later this year. So he's going to have a bit of a layoff after the Mike Tyson fight when he's usually pretty active. But I don't know. It's just such an interesting situation, and I'm excited to see who they announce. What is good for MVP is that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing, they have settled with the lawsuit. It's unclear if it was a settlement or a dismissal, but it's over. They're not moving forward with it. This is good. Even if Jake said stuff that was out of line and Eddie had a right to sue him, I don't want there to be lawsuits going on between promoters. I just want them to move on and make big fights. They've made fights in the meantime. They worked with Amanda Serrano multiple times and Katie Taylor and stuff. So it's kind of weird how they've been having this lawsuit the whole time and have still been able to work together. But now that there is no lawsuit, and just hopeful that Jake doesn't say anything stupid anymore, which I think that he won't. He's learned his lesson. I'm hopeful that we're still going to get a better working relationship and more fights made, because they've got some good ones to make. And I'm really excited to see the future, and just glad that this whole situation is over. It was always quite weird. And then Clarissa Shields says that she will never sign with MVP or fight on an undercard because she's the pound-for-pound number 1 and she doesn't fight on undercards. The signing with MVP, you don't need to. But she should absolutely fight on this undercard. She can be in the co-main event, which we know now she won't because Baumgartner's on there, and she would not fight below Baumgartner, and she shouldn't. She would be above Baumgartner. But it'll absolutely be the biggest platform she's ever fought on. It'll be probably her biggest, most seen fight. And, I mean, it's just, you can't let your ego get in the way of opportunity. Because if she just goes and she's going to go fight somebody nobody's ever heard of on a DAZN show on Salida Promotions, and it's just not what we need. We need to see her on the big stage, and I think she really should. I know the MVP offered her; they absolutely did, and she really should have taken it. So I think that was a fumble on her part. I understand her reasoning in saying that I'm pound for pound number 1. I should be above them. I do think that she is probably pound for pound number 1, but you can't be in the main event over Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano 3. That's a bigger fight than any fight you have ever had or ever will have, just because of the division you're in and the divisions you fight around in, because there's not as many big names. Taylor and Amanda, Katie and Amanda, they are 2 and 3, if not 1. So it makes a lot of sense for them to fight, and their fights have been incredible. So if she were to fight on this card, she'd be co-main event. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to sign with MVP, whatever. I just think it's a missed opportunity. Richard Riakporhe says that he's pretty much confirmed for the Eubank Ben undercard. This is really surprising. We know that it was going to be him versus Lawrence Okolie, supposed to be this Saturday. Lawrence Okolie got injured. Riakporhe's not signed with Queensberry, so they didn't try and get him an opponent, which, I think that they should have, but it's whatever. They have no obligation to. And he's saying he's now confirmed for the undercard. Now, we don't know who he's going to be fighting against. They've already got 2 other cruiserweight fights on that card, so I have no idea who he could be in with. I bet that there are some good fights they could get him, and I'd like them to add more fights to that card. It's not a huge card as of yet in terms of the amount of fights. They only have 5. They can totally throw on another one. If they don't, I won't complain, and I can see this just not materializing, but it's really interesting that he says he's pretty much confirmed to be on it when we haven't heard even a whisper about him on it. Liam Cameron apparently was sent a 12-round contract for the Ben Whittaker fight on accident, and Boxer are now trying to change it to 10, but Cameron won't budge. See, I actually kind of like this from Liam Cameron. I think they made a mistake, and I don't think that is one of those, oh, they went to 12 and then changed it to 10. No, I seriously think they wanted to make a mistake. Maybe they were talking about it, but this fight should not be 12 rounds. It should be 10. There's no reason it would be 12. And I like the idea of Liam Cameron being like, I fought 12 rounds before. Yeah, no, let's do 12. I think that he would look better over 12 rounds, probably. I think Ben has never been that distance before and would probably, not be as used to it with his conditioning. So we'll see if it ends up happening. I think it'll still get switched to 10, but if he really doesn't budge, they may just say, screw it, let's just do 12. It's still a main event on Sky Sports. I think it should be 10. I think it will end up being 10, but I think it'd be funny if Liam Cameron refuses to, and that's the reason it ends up being 12 rounds. I think that'd be awesome. Zanfer have not ruled out seeking a rematch for Angel Ayala versus Masamichi Ibuki. They shouldn't seek it out because there's no need in doing that. Ibuki completely dominated him. You can maybe give Ayala a round. That's it. I don't understand why they would even go for the rematch. On top of getting dominated, he got stopped, and it wasn't like he was the favorite or anything. If they wanted it to, if they thought it was going to be a competitive 50-50 fight where he deserves the rematch clause, then they shouldn't have let the fight happen in Japan because Ayala was marketed in that fight as the champion that Ibuki's going to take the belt from, and that's what happened. I do not think we'll see a rematch. I think that there's no need to at all. It was a complete Ibuki dominant display. Ayala did not look great. They can try and get a rematch, but I hope that they don't get one because that fight would make no sense at all. Can Ayala win some more fights and get back to a title fight? Sure, but not immediately. Jermaine Ortiz says he has a signed world title fight for June. This is really interesting to me. I think, honestly, we did also hear today, I saw that Richard Hitchison said that he's got his next fight official date that'll be announced soon. We know he's supposed to fight George Kambosos. Kambosos has a cut. If Kambosos' cut, is too bad, then they could get Jermaine Ortiz in there. I wouldn't be surprised at that. We know it won't be Teofimo Lopez. It could be Gary Antoine Russell or Alberto Puello. I'd be fine with those. Jermaine Ortiz is one of those guys at 140 that I would assume, he'll probably get a world title fight again someday. But I am a little bit confused as to he's getting it now. I think he's kind of jumping the queue. I think that there are so many good fighters at 140 that he doesn't deserve to get in there and get himself an immediate title fight. Not immediate. He's had 2 fights since the Teofimo Lopez loss, and he looked good in that fight, but I don't know. I just don't think that he's deserving of that title fight now. I think he's still got to wait a while, and there are other guys ahead of him in the queue for sure. But if he says he has one signed for June, we'll see who it is. If that's true, we'll see if it actually materializes. UFC Atlanta is looking more and more likely. So we got word today that Volkov versus Almeida is in the works. Man, this is awesome. This is really, really awesome. I live in the Atlanta area, and I very much hope that we're going to get Alexander Volkov, Jailton Almeida. I think that's a freaking awesome fight. I think this very well could be a title eliminator. The winner of this could be Cyril Gane, just because, Gane kind of robbed Volkov in that fight, and Volkov does deserve another opportunity. But if he beats Almeida, he may jump over Gane in the rankings, and, we could see this one fight the winner of John Jones, Tom Aspinall. It could be Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane for all we know, and the winner of this fights that, but this is number 3 versus number 6. This is as high as it gets in terms of getting close to that title shot. If not, the winner of this will absolutely be in a title eliminator next. It's a huge fight. This would likely headline the Atlanta card, or at least be co-main. I think it would headline it, but yeah, I'm really stoked, and I hope we get this one because, man, that's awesome. That's a war. And the last thing we'll talk about, the last crescendo, the ring today said that it has generated 340,000 pay-per-view buys on February 22nd, which I think is a really good number, if we're being honest. I don't think that that's bad at all, and I think that that's a lot. That's more than I would have thought. I mean, think of it. Trevante Davis, Lamont Roach, I think, did 260. Now, I don't know if that was in the U.S. or worldwide, but we did hear Last Crescendo only did 45K in the U.S., but 340 worldwide, that's a really good number, like very good. So, and for guys where it was a fantastic card, but there wasn't a lot of huge names on it, I think that it was a really good event. It was the best boxing card of all time, and I'm glad to see that they still did good numbers. And we can stop talking about the 45K because they did a lot more than that worldwide. 340 in this day and age is really good numbers. It was a cheap price, and hopefully more people buy pay per view so that we keep getting cards like this. That's all I've got today. Oh, and then well, actually one other thing. I thought I already talked about this. I thought this was already ordered, but I did just see today that Osles Iglesias and Kevin Lele Saggio have now been officially ordered to fight for the IBF Super Middleweight Title Eliminator. I thought they already were, but the win of this will be mandatory for Canelo versus Skull. And, we know it's going to be Canelo versus Crawford. Once he gets through that, if Diego Pacheco and Christian and Billy fight, and Osles Iglesias and Kevin Saggio fight, maybe the winners of those meet, and then the winner of that fights the winner of Canelo Crawford? I don't know. But super middleweight division is getting really interesting, and I'm glad to see that the next wave of fighters are not just waiting for Canelo. They're fighting each other. It's a fight that I think Iglesias wins. I think that he's a monster. I think he's fantastic. But yeah, I'm really excited to see that fight. A lot to talk about today. I tried to go through it quickly. Thank you so much for listening. I'll have another episode on Friday after the PFL, BKFC, and GBM shows. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about all the stuff coming up on Saturday. 7 big events. And yeah, and then we'll move on to next week. But thank you for listening. I'll be back Friday evening, and peace out.